Good afternoon. Hi. Good day. Whatever. Okay. First, the apology. I had a car crash fairly recently, and after a lot of treatment, my dentist decided he couldn't save my teeth, so I just lost them, and I've not had time to get my implants yet. So if I look scary, that's why. Okay. The second thing I really want to say before I speak is I know Marrius Romme, who's my mentor, and the author of books like Accepting Voices, Living with Voices, and a whole host of other books. One of our great desires in the movement was to get Marrius and Michael White together on a platform, and we were just arranging at the time our first international conference in Australia in Perth when we lost Michael, and that was our greatest thing I've missed, because what I wanted to see was on that platform were two men who had stood up against the status quo and had challenged, really, psychiatry in a way that psychiatry was never challenged, even by the anti-psychiatry movement. It was a different challenge. It was a challenge to engage rather than to just say, this is another anti-psychiatry movement, we don't need to listen to you. And that was a challenge, I think, that both Marrius and Michael brought to the table. In 1987, a man called Marrius Romme stood up and said that hearing voices is a normal human experience. And he challenged psychiatry in that statement. He said it was a normal human reaction to abnormal lived events. And that was a real challenge. And then he went on television with a woman who was a voice hearer. And they asked for voice hearers who heard voices and coped with them and never been in touch with psychiatry to get in touch with them. And they did. They had 700 odd responses, and 2/3 of those responded heard voices and had never been in touch with psychiatry. So with that group, Marrius started interviewing. He wanted to find out what was the difference between those who ended up in our system and those that didn't end up in the system. And he discovered a number of differences. It wasn't the voices they heard. What it was how they reacted to those voices, how they responded to the voices, how they engaged with their voices. Those that were able to respond positively with their voices didn't end up in psychiatry. Those who responded in a negative way to their voices ended up in psychiatry. So it wasn't the fact they heard voices that made any difference at all. And that was when Marrius made that statement. And of course, when he made the statement, the system responded. They said to him things like, Marrius, you can't say this. And things like, Marrius, are you hearing voices? Is this what it's about? You know, they almost tried to make him mad. That was 1987. In 1997, Marrius Romme was knighted by the Dutch government for his services to voice hearing. Right? 10 years. That's all it took. 10 years before his work started to be recognised. In 1994 in the UK, we made a programme for Horizon, which was about voices. And we were called by the Royal College of Psychiatry at that time the most dangerous organisation in mental health today, which is a brilliant accolade, you know. Yeah. Then in 2001, the president of the Royal College of Psychiatry made another statement about the Hearing Voices Network in the UK. He said, the Hearing Voices Network is one of the most important self-help groups in mental health today. They changed their mind. Right? So this idea that psychiatry doesn't change is nonsense. They go with the flow. You can tell that when you read the DSM. Yeah. They really go with that flow, you know. And psychiatry for me, and I did say this yesterday, is the only profession whose manual is constructed not for the profession, but for the insurance companies. Now, I can't understand why we've allowed that to happen. Why the DSM, in its wonderment, I call it the best written comic in the world. And we even have parties around DSM. And when people come to our house for these parties, what you do is you open the DSM at any page and you've got to play the part for the night. Yeah. That's great. The last time we had that party, I got anorexia nervosa. So I gave myself bulimic tendencies because I was at a party. You know? I was actually hoping to get hypersexual activity disorder, but no such luck. But that's the world we live in. That's true. That's what's in those books. A crazy mix of symptoms that aren't symptoms, that are part of normal human behavior. A crazy mix of ideas that are built upon in order to make sure somebody can get funding. I remember the first time we tried to introduce the Hearing Voices Network to America. And the one question we were asked at every meeting was, how are we going to build this? I thought, what? How do you build self-help? You know, how do you build that? And it was just this notion that people are a commodity, not people, that I just can't get my head around in that system of madness. Our first conference, which was 25 years ago, there was 13 of us. That was an international conference, yeah. And it was international because it was held in the UK and Marrius Romme came. So that made it international. And there was 13 of us at that conference. And the conference in Liverpool that David was speaking about, John Williams, Mickey de Valda, Terry McLaughlin, were all speaking, all now dead, all now passed over, all now gone, all before their time. Mickey, sudden heart failure in his early 50s. John Williams, sudden heart failure in his early 50s. Terry McLaughlin, the only one to reach 60 plus. Yeah. And I could go on and name lots of people in our movement. Leaders, Hannah-Laura McClafkey from Germany. Loads of others who've all died 20 years before their time because we tried to use a biological solution to a social problem, because we tried to cure what had happened using medicine. That's the problem that psychiatry faces. I am not anti-psychiatry. I am anti-bad psychiatry. And I am not anti-medication. I am anti the bad use of medication. I see those as very strong ethical positions that as a workforce we need to take. That it's okay to challenge the deity of psychiatry, because certainly psychiatry has challenged the deity of God, not the other way around. And as I said yesterday, I looked at DSM-4 to prove that, where psychiatry has a wonderful illness called spiritual disorder, which basically says it's okay to talk to God, but if God talks back, you're stuffed. Thereby denying the fundamental truth of the major three religions of this world, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, which all say God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And God spoke to us yesterday through the prophets. He speaks to us today in that quiet, and he'll speak to us tomorrow, or God's a liar. And I personally don't believe God's a liar. And that was something I was listening to the last session in here by the Maori, and it was wonderful to hear people talk about spirituality and mental health, something we are so frightened of, something that we will not do. You know, we've handed over to science the existence of our spiritual lives. You know? And yet, the word psychotherapist, what does it mean? Midwife of the soul. That's what the word means. Psyche, soul, therapist, midwife. Midwife of the soul. And I don't know about the people you work with, but the people I work with, I am working with broken spirits. I am working with people who don't have a broken brain or a diseased mind, but whose spirits have been broken by what's happened to them, by the things they have gone through. That's the people I work with.